AITAH for ghosting my best friend after she asked me to be her pregnancy buddy. Okay, so I've been trying to organize this in my head so I can write it out in a way that makes sense, and I think I've got it. This is also my first post, so I'll try to do it in the accepted Reddit format I've seen. There's a lot to go through, so please bear with me, and I apologize in advance for the length. I'm super nervous about posting this, can you tell? Anyways, I, 31F, have a friend, 32F, who we'll call Z for the purposes of this post. For background, Z and I have been extremely close since elementary school, to the point we called each other sisters, and our fathers worked together for years before that. Needless to say, I was close with her family as well, and spent a lot of time with both her parents and her siblings, as well as her grandparents. I was always over at their houses, I attended events at their church, and we did a majority of things throughout school together. In high school, Z met her now husband, who we'll call Jay. Jay was a couple years ahead of us, and they spent a lot of time together, and soon her entire world revolved around him. Her priorities completely shifted, she changed, and I wasn't sure if it was for the better. I felt a bit off around him, uncomfortable, and voiced my concern at one point, but quickly backed off. I thought perhaps I was just jealous. My antisocial, introverted side was popping out. Or something equally ridiculous. I wanted Z to be happy, and I didn't want to lose the friendship, especially for what I thought was a stupid reason. So I made an effort to get to know and be friendly with Jay, though I still kept a little bit of distance. Fast forward a bit, Z gets pregnant with Jay's baby our junior year of high school, and marries him right out of high school. I should probably mention, Z's family is super religious, as that plays a role in all of this. They settle into married life and have another kid. Around this time, I go through some, we'll just say rather traumatic shit. My life completely falls apart, and one of the first people I go to, one of the first people I tell, is Z. I stay with her and her family for a bit, including Jay, until I get back up on my feet. Months later, after I'd left, Z comes to me and asks to talk. Of course, I say yes. Context, we're 18 and 19 now. She tells me she'd talked to her husband, and they both wanted to help me learn to trust men again. This throws me off, because I'd told her in confidence, and she was one of only maybe 3 people total I had told, and she thinks her husband would be the best for that job, as I knew him and trusted him. I didn't really, but I couldn't tell her that. When I asked Z what she meant, she said she thought I should have sex with Jay so I could learn to trust men again. Mentally, I'm going, what the literal fuck? But I just ask her if she's serious, and she can't possibly be suggesting I have an affair with her husband. She doubles down, saying she's been so worried about me, and I obviously wasn't doing well. I really wasn't. I was about as low and messed up as it gets, struggling to get through each day and scared of my own shadow. We argued about it for a bit, and she let slip that she was also worried about her husband cheating on her. He'd done it before, and she'd rather know who he was sleeping with. All of this, on top of all the shit already going on in my head, threw me for a major loop. I'm not proud of it, and I'm sure a lot of you will be horrified, but I eventually caved. I can't even begin to say why. My therapist had a field day with that one when I finally told her a month ago. I instantly regretted it. It made me feel worse than ever, and it has haunted me ever since. She has brought up doing it again a few times since, but I am so glad I can honestly say I immediately turned it down every single time. Again, fast forward another 6, maybe 7 years. We're in our mid-20s at this point. I'm so sorry I can't remember exact ages. And after a few hospital visits and years of therapy, I'm doing quite a bit better. Not perfect, but getting into a better place. I hadn't spent as much time with Z, Jay, or their family as I used to, but I still went to every birthday, every baby shower, etc. Z has 4 kids at this point, and she wanted to try for a 5th. Apparently, she'd seen some kind of trend online about pregnancy buddies. Basically, women getting pregnant at the same time with babies and doing all kinds of shit together, like joint baby showers, birth announcements, classes, shopping, etc. Z thought this was the best thing ever. And, knowing I had talked in the past about wanting kids and a family of my own someday, came to me saying she wanted me to be her pregnancy buddy. I really didn't want to destroy our friendship, so I tried, somewhat, calmly explaining why that wouldn't be a good idea. I wasn't in a relationship. I wouldn't agree to being knocked up by a random stranger. I wasn't in a place financially or mentally emotionally to properly support a child. It wouldn't be fair to the kid to bring it into the world when I wasn't ready for it. She insisted everything would work out, and I couldn't wait for everything to be perfect, or I'd never have any kids. Z said I could get money from the government for any babies I had, and I wouldn't have to get pregnant by a stranger since Jay had already offered. Also, he could be a present, active father in the child's life, or he and Z would adopt the baby if I didn't want it. I really tried explaining to her everything wrong with this plan. First, how could she think I'd give up a baby? She more than anyone knew how much I always wanted kids. Second, how the fuck would we explain any of this to either of our families or all the kids involved? How would her hyper-religious family react to me having my best friend's husband's baby? How would we explain to Jay and Z's kids, each of whom I'd held the day they were born and been around their whole lives as auntie? And how would I explain to my hypothetical baby when they were old enough? Third, I would never ever rely on government funds to raise my child. I couldn't do it, couldn't just provide the bare minimum with no control myself. So, yeah, she didn't absorb any of that, was so adamant that it would work. And then, mid-conversation, via text, with Z, Jay jumps in, calling me and starting the whole thing all over again. He's super enthusiastic about the idea, won't listen to any of my arguments, even less so than Z did. They both pushed me to consider it, told me to get back to them, and over the next couple of months they tried again a few times. After all of that, I had a hard time facing them. I went to less gatherings. I started communicating less. Stopped responding to texts asking about the whole pregnancy buddy thing. Then, any texts at all. Z did end up having another baby, and I've never met him. And I haven't seen her and her family in several years. It hurts. I miss her kids. I miss her parents and grandparents. I miss the friendship we had. Recently, Z reached out to me again and told me she's been struggling, that she's having a hard time. I won't give details here, as that's not my place, but I felt like an absolute ass not being there for her. I did respond and talked for a very short time, because I still care for her despite everything. She was my best friend for years, but I haven't spoken to her since, and I feel so incredibly guilty. I spoke to my therapist about it, but she's focused on my mental health, not Z's, so I feel like it isn't an unbiased opinion. Am I the asshole for ghosting Z and her entire family? Am I wrong for not being there for her while she struggles, when she was there for me? I'm so stuck in my head with all this that it's driving me insane, and I really need some perspective on this. I feel like maybe I overreacted, or maybe it isn't as big a deal as I think, though to me, it all seems so unbelievably crazy. To address some things in the comments, for those who say it's fake, I wish it was, but you're welcome to believe it is fake. I won't yuck your yum. It would be so much easier if it was, and deciding it's fake probably makes it less disturbing. I was under the impression from reading the rules of this subreddit that calling posts fake wasn't allowed. I could be wrong, and honestly it doesn't matter to me one way or another. I kind of expected it. To respond to a couple posts calling me selfish for not responding to her when she reached out and said she was struggling. Like I said in my main post, I did respond. I talked to her for a bit. I just didn't reach out after that initial conversation. Perhaps I wasn't clear enough, and that's on me. I'm not sure if me responding to her in the first place was healthy for me. And after reading a lot of the posts here, I have my doubts. But what's done is done. For the commenters who were concerned her reaching out was an attempt to suck me back in, I don't think so. But I could be wrong. I didn't add the content of that conversation, which was via text, because while I'm putting a lot of shit out here, what she said truly isn't mine to post about, and I'm not about to air someone else's private matters that don't directly involve me. I am sorry I can't give more context with that. Some people have asked about Z and Jay's education after high school careers, and if they have any. Jay has a job, but I've been out of the loop long enough, I don't know what it is, how much it pays, as he switched careers sometime after I started ghosting. Z finished a trade school and works. I am not sure if it's full-time. It wasn't when I was still in contact. They did receive supplemental income for their kids, which led to her suggesting it for me and my hypothetical polyamory baby. From my reading, there seem to be two opinions on Z and Jay's behavior. One side saying they think Z knows very well what she's doing and is a partner to Jay in all this, and the other saying she's basically been beaten down, conditioned to do what Jay wants. I tend to lean more towards the second. but I also don't think it's completely black and white. I do think if she got away from him, she wouldn't do things like this. But at this point, I don't know if she ever will get away. As for people calling me a doormat, yeah, I know I was. I'm not proud of it, and I'm actively working on changing that aspect of my personality. It's still a work in progress, but I like to think I'm doing better. There are other toxic relationships in my life, not relevant to this story, that I have slowly worked on backing away from over the years. Relationships where my doormatish tendencies were a major factor, and which contributed to my doormatishness. Like I've mentioned, I have been in therapy for years now, a minimum of once a week, and my current therapist is great at calling out the behaviors that tend to lead to trouble. I think I covered everything, but I will keep an eye on this post still. Some of the responses, I think, were a kick in the pants I needed to get that last foot out of the door of this relationship. So many of you brought up things I didn't really think of before, and I'm more likely than not going to have a nice long talk with my therapist about it. Hopefully it can be healing. I do still miss Z's kids, and her parents and grandparents. Losing them will always hurt, I think. But so many of you are right that it isn't worth the continued toxicity to keep those relationships when keeping them means staying around everything else. Edit 2. First, I want to clarify I am aware there are successful polyamorous relationships, and I'm cool with that. It's just not for me. I think the biggest problem isn't that it's polyamory. It's that it's something I'm not comfortable doing myself, and it's still getting pushed. A couple of you suggested I tell my parents. I did tell my mum. I will not be telling my dad. There have also been those suggesting I tell her parents. I wouldn't even know where to begin, and I don't really know what it would accomplish. I don't know if it would be a good thing or just cause even more trouble. It would also be putting myself right back in the middle of all of it, which I don't know if I could handle at this point in time. Edit 3. I don't know exactly what branch of religion Z's family practices, just that it is a branch of Christianity. Further, I don't think that religion has much, if anything, to do with what Z and J are pushing for. The reason I added that information is to explain why I don't think her family knows, would agree. I did grow up going to many of their church events at their church and different functions, and her parents aren't exactly shy about talking about their beliefs, which, cool, no problem. But having been around them pretty much my whole life, I feel I know enough about their beliefs to say they wouldn't agree with this. They subscribe to being faithful to your single partner and not straying, things like that. Also, the whole no sex before marriage, but I don't believe Z paid attention to that part.